For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lyal White. I head up the Johannesburg Business School, strangely enough. My stunt double to my right is just going to be your host today. But we're really, really excited to invite you. I see there might be a couple of familiar faces that came to our MBA open days, open evenings, open mornings. Those of you that are interested, we're still running quite a few of them. I'm looking around the room right now. Leo's going to tell us there's going to be about 10 more. No, there's only going to be a few more in the next few months. The registrations for the MBA Kieno open on the 1st of August. So please have a look at those, look at our website. Oh, but I see that they've actually given you some of the brochures right in front of you, so you can read a little bit more about it. Hot off the press. I just want to, as a brief introduction, I do apologize for my back over here. As a brief introduction to the business school, we are really doing things differently, and that's one of the reasons why we're hosting events like this. And bringing in real life people that are doing innovative things for the future world of work and business in the South African and in the African context, Lyndsey. It's a very, very important part. By the way, I took 3 words to Brazil and the Brazilians loved it. So if the Brazilians love it, the South Africans will love it and the Africans at large will love it. So there we go. One quick mention, because Diesel has given me this very eloquent list of things to talk about. Visit JBS website for info on our upcoming programs. There you go, you've got that. So you must please visit the JBS website for the upcoming events. We've got lots coming up. We're putting together a series of the future of business education, although we're not going to be calling it that. But looking at things like biomimicry and storytelling and how we're going to use music in business education. Very, very important. All that type of stuff. So please look at those. We've got a whole series of master classes that we're also launching, all in the interest of doing things very, very differently and appealing really to business and not necessarily the boring, management education. So that's really, really good.
Thank heavens.
Yeah, okay. And on a final note, I'd like you to also, and I hope you have given us your details. You're on the database. This week we have the Africa Business Briefing, which is a monthly publication that we release from the Johannesburg Business School. And one of the little takeaways that I took from there, and I suppose it was a takeaway that I could take because it was right at the start of the article, it was one of the few things that I remember. But interestingly enough, 75% of the global workforce by 2025 will be will be millennials. And guess what? They don't want to work for me, they don't want to work for you, Kieno, they don't want to work for any corporate, they want to work for themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we really are working towards here at the Johannesburg Business School. So, but I'm going to let other people who know a lot more about this, who are from the real world, share things and their experiences with you. So guys, thank you very much, and lady, and Kieno. Kieno?
What does that make me, an alien? Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I know. So, thank you very much. Welcome. Enjoy it. I'm going to hand over to Kieno Kammies. Thank you very much and enjoy. Enjoy it all.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The one thing I must tell you about Lyal, we've got a couple of things in common. I mean, our impeccable hairdos happens to be one, but we both have ADHD. Is that right? ADHD or just ADD?
I can't work with acronyms,
Okay, that attention thingy. But none of us have been fired yet, which is a great thing. And I think the future is going to need that as well. So today we're obviously here to talk about these amazing trailblazers over here. They're going to introduce themselves to you, tell you a little bit more about the businesses, just a little bit about myself. I used to work at 702 in Jacaranda, then they kicked me out of Gauteng and I moved to Cape Town. I'm doing a breakfast show there at the moment. Been on radio for about 23 years. Getting a bit sick of it, but my real passion is really technology. So long story short, I'm the CEO of a company called unmet, and it's keyless entry. As it relates to smart cities, big data, and the rest of it. And then also a shareholder of a company called Dr. KDEX. And we use, what's that fancy thing called convoluted neural networks? Machine learning, just to diagnose tuberculosis and doing some work with the National Health Department. So that is really where my passion's at. The reason I love coming to these discussions is because if you look at some of the mindsets we still have in education, some of the mindsets that some parents still have and what they tell their kids about the future that's not going to exist, or a big parts of that future won't be existing as a result of double exponential growth in technology. I think these type of discussions give you a wonderful window into the future, and I think will hopefully allow us to, when we go home, when we have discussions with our kids, our friends. We can help change the mindset and, future-proof a society. But I suspect that more than 80% of you are already converted. So, talking about, challenges for digital entrepreneurs, opportunities for digital entrepreneurs in South Africa, I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, because my ADD, I don't read so lekker. Okay. By the way, are you all alive?
Yeah.
Can we make some noise? No, man. There's one dude sounding like he's on his way to season. Where's the rest of you? Make some noise. Thank you. Oh, there we go. They are alive. We can confirm that now. So let's...
That's definitely a good thing.
Absolutely. So just introduce us a little bit to yourselves and why you exist.
Cool.
Why should we even care?
Cool. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I introduce myself, I just want to apologize. I've got a bit of a flu, so if the sniffles get in between me and my words...
Sounds like a sexy radio voice, don't worry about it.
So, my name is Ndabenhle Ngulube, and I am one of the co-founders of Pineapple. And just out of curiosity, how many people here have heard of Pineapple before? Okay, so not too bad. So in 2016, we were tasked with trying to disrupt the insurance space. And immediately once we started the journey, we realized that from the perspective of a millennial, insurance wasn't fun at all, right? It's a very complicated process. It's not really intuitive. And the products that traditional insurance companies were selling were riddled with industry jargon, and it was just a very traumatizing experience to purchase, specifically item-by-item insurance. And during our research, we found that millennials, on average, they only have a few high-valued items. So there was a real demand from them to have access to item-by-item insurance. So we developed this app, Pineapple. It allows you to insure your items merely by taking a picture of that item. And then we use artificial intelligence that picks up what that item is and associates it with the appropriate policy. Furthermore, all you have to do is add a few more details, such as a description for the item and a value, and we show you your premium, and then you put in payment details, and just like that, you are insured. So we launched our app towards the end of last year. And to date, we have almost 16,000 people on the platform, and it's growing day by day. So in a nutshell, that's what we're working on.
Well done. Some traction there, eh? Yeah. Everybody wishes and hopes for that sort of thing. Just a little more, because I, for example, I was telling you offline that I fly a drone for my sins, right? And these things are hellishly expensive, and no one wants to insure it. The ones who do want to insure it, because I lied, the ones who do want to insure it will only insure it if it's locked up in your bulletproof car, right, with satellite surveillance. If someone then breaks in and steals it, they will insure it. But I don't have to go through that hassle with you.
No, not at all. So actually, funny enough, drones are one of the biggest items on our books. And, the rules and regulations behind what we cover for are way more lax than traditional insurance. So we do cover drones in flight, just as long as you aren't flying them over the ocean or using them for drone fishing, which a lot of people actually do, which I'm not too sure why, but yeah.
We do fly them, so if the ships are close enough, we fly them off Joburg Beach, and then we go around the ship, fly over the ship and back, so that wouldn't be covered.
No, as long as you fly over water, you're not covered.
Oh, yeah. No, just kidding. No, it's still a wonderful product. Now, just a couple of hands very quickly. How many of you use a normal TomTom? Okay, it was a trick question. Okay. How many of you all use your Google Maps or Waze, right? Yeah. How often have you put in the address and then you still couldn't find exactly where it is? Can I see some hands? Oh, you see Lyndsey. It's absolutely wonderful. Just tell us a little bit about your business. You are the country manager, of course, Lyndsey Duff, country manager of What 3 Words. Lyal did a lovely sales pitch there. But yeah. Just tell us a little bit about why you did this.
Yeah, I'm the country manager for South Africa for What 3 Words, and I'm going to, like Ndabenhle asked, how many people have heard of What 3 Words in the room? Oh, not too many, that's great. So we actually cater to exactly the problem that Kieno just asked you. When you can't find something because the address isn't accurate, if you think about traditional addresses like 65 Jan Smuts or 22 Napier Road, this has been a system that's been in place for literally hundreds of years, and it's never evolved. It's never been improved. We've always just done the same thing and relied on governments to roll out very expensive, very bureaucratic, very long-term addressing plans for countries. We know that it's never really top of the priority list, especially in South Africa, especially in the developing world, where there's other more pressing things to do. So we've taken traditional addresses and we've completely reinvented them. So we've given every single 3 meter by 3 meter square in the world its own totally unique 3-word identifier. We call it a 3-word address. So the front door of our office in Woodmead is Punk Braved Warriors, and that's the only spot in the world that's called Punk Braved Warriors. The right foot of the Statue of Liberty is Chip Twice Update. So that means anyone can now talk about anywhere really, really simply. And we believe it's an incredibly enabling technology because suddenly everyone in the world has a way of talking about where they are. In a nutshell.
Wonderful stuff. Lyal, you sent me some more information about this particular business, and I thought I'd give it a try, and it actually pinpointed me into, on my bed where I was sitting.
Yeah.
You see, there's the block, and there I am, and I could see, okay, on the property so it's absolutely spot on, and we'll find out more about it a bit later because, I think one of the questions I have, obviously, is it doesn't operate as a standalone. You can then go on to Google Maps, and then you can find your way using that.
Or
right?
Waze or Apple Maps, whatever navigation you use.
Whichever navigation system you're using. Now, Mike, does Mike look like a CA? Of course he doesn't.
You had to bring that up.
Of course. If Mike were a CA, he wouldn't be sitting here. I mean, if he were only a CA, because this is about the future, and CAs are all going to be replaced by AI one of these days, won't it?
100%.
True story. Just tell us a little bit about your business, Genie Guru, and then you obviously have one of the other businesses that you've created through this, uKheshe.
Without the E.
uKheshe.
Pronounced uKheshe.
uKheshe. Oh, okay.
It's Zulu for cash.
I'm from the Cape Flats, man. I'm learning. All right. So just, give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, the business, the purpose.
So, hi, my name's Mike. I'm one of 4 founders of
It's a remixed version.
One of 4 founders of a software development company called Genie Guru. We build cool stuff for telco and fintech, so for customers themselves, and we build our own products as well. And about 1.5, 2 years ago, we decided to be able to build a CSI initiative type product, which has turned out to be uKheshe, which is one of these. So what it is, and I'll go into a bit more detail later, is think of it as Zapper and SnapScan meets FNB e-wallet where you don't need a bank account. So if you look at South Africa at the moment, we call them the missing millions, call them 20 odd million people that are underbanked, no bank account, financially excluded, whatever you want to call it. And those people for numerous reasons, don't have a bank account, can't get access to a bank account. And they're running around with cash. The cash economy is huge in South Africa. It's really underestimated how much is actually trading with cash. And a lot of people are getting robbed on a day-to-day basis, and we came up with a solution to be able to help with that. So what uKheshe is think of it as there's a QR code payment mechanism where somebody can go and buy one of these cards from Pick n Pay, so they're 20 Rand at Pick n Pay. Take one of those, it creates a digital wallet for them, a virtual wallet linked to their cell phone, and they can accept payments from anybody who has a cell phone and a digital form of payment. So it accepts Zapper, SnapScan, FNB, Nedbank, etc., etc. You're able to pay those people. And all they need is a cell phone to be able to do it. And not a smartphone, a cell phone. So it runs via USSD as well, which means that by dialing a code, you can then accept payments, you can go and withdraw money at Pick n Pay and other vendors as well. So that's uKheshe.
And let's talk about, so you're with Pick n Pay, talk a little bit about traction.
So we started in November last year. And we soft launched in November last year, and in the interim we've integrated with MasterCard and MasterPass. So this code here is a MasterPass code, and secondly Pick n Pay as well. So they're our partner, which big organizations, let's just say that it takes time to be able to get any traction with organizations, and it's like a big ship and you have to turn the ship very slowly. But we've had great traction. We're sitting at 300,000 users in the space of, call it 6 months. and growing.
Now, that's one question I didn't ask you, Lyndsey, just what 3 words and your traction at the moment. You've got some big businesses already using your system.
We do, yeah. So we've been around for about 5 years now, originally headquartered in the UK. And we're working with everyone from governments around the world as an official addressing standard. So the government of Mongolia, Cote d'Ivoire and Djibouti here in Africa, Mongolia and St. Martin in the Caribbean and other places, where you can send a letter with a postal service to a 3-word address. So I could just send something to Kieno, Kammies at Table Chair Spoon and it would get to you with that system. We're also working with other big businesses like Mercedes-Benz, who've built us into their cars for voice navigation. If you think about trying to speak to your device with a traditional address, saying something like 23 Jan Smuts Avenue, Google's not going to understand what you mean by Jan Smuts. But dictionary words, which is what our system uses, it will understand. So table, chair, spoon, happy chair mountain, punk, braved warriors, it'll pick up. Others include Ford, which is a second car company that's launched, another one called Bodron in China. And we have everybody from the UNDP using us in disaster situations to, actually next month we're launching our first emergency services partner in South Africa who will be able to respond to an emergency anywhere, any 3 by 3 meters in South Africa with just 3 words.
Wow. If you just think about EMS trying to get through to any township for that matter, trying to find someone who is giving birth, who is, in some sort of traumatic situation, those EMS staff struggle to try and find the right place. So if you use the 3 words, you're going to save lives, literally.
Exactly, yeah. You're talking about the unaddressed. So the unbanked, massive problem in South Africa, the unaddressed or under-addressed. If you think about the legacy of apartheid spatial planning and how damaging that's been for people being able to talk about where they are, just to get basic services, like an ambulance, never mind getting an e-commerce delivery and your shoes from Takealot or whatever it is. So we're trying to address that problem and basically introduce it into communities so that they just have a really simple way now to get over that hurdle.
And that is in terms of future, that is what you focusing on. So just get a little bit about the future, because this is what I want to talk about. I know we're going to talk about challenges, but I prefer talking about the positives and the dreaming. I even liked Boris Johnson yesterday, watching him on Sky. I mean, the guy was so hopeful that they're going to get out of Brexit. It's great. It's great to be hopeful, to start, and then we'll deal with the challenges later. Just a little bit more about your vision, your future, where you'd like to see this in the next 5 years.
We have a big, hairy goal. That's what 3 words, which is to be the next global standard of addressing. So traditional addresses as we know them not only differ from country to country, but they also just don't exist for literally 4 billion people around the world. That's a problem. An instant addressing system like this means everybody already has an address. They just need to find out what it is. We're in 36 languages now, including Zulu, Xhosa, and Afrikaans here in South Africa, and we're adding more languages literally every couple of months, as quickly as we can go. So it's an enabling tech that allows anybody to talk about where they are, and we want eventually governments to start recognizing that, including the South African government. So we want it to be an official legal address here in South Africa.
That is phenomenal. So let's go to pineapple.
Cool.
And, your hairy, audacious goals for the future.
So, one thing that I didn't touch on in my introduction is that a very critical and integral part of Pineapple is the transparency that we give you into what actually happens with the premium that you pay on a month-to-month basis. So on the app, you can actually open up your wallet and see whose claims your wallet is helping to contribute to. And initially, when you join Pineapple, your wallet is helping to pay for the claims of random policyholders on Pineapple. But what we allow you to do is find your friends on Pineapple and send them friend requests. And as your friendship network on Pineapple grows bigger and bigger, the less your wallet is affected by the claims of other random people on Pineapple. And eventually you're only paying for the claims of your friends and yourself on Pineapple. And whatever's left in your wallet after 12 months, you get to withdraw. So basically what we're saying is, hey, listen, you know your friends, you know that they're good risks, you know who to trust and who not to trust, so we're giving you complete control as to whose claims you're going to be paying for. So that's what we want to build on, and eventually deliver more value back to the policyholder at the end of the day.
So it's true collective intelligence.
Exactly.
You're using your AI technology on the one hand, but then human intuition and knowledge on the other, bringing those together and providing a product.
Exactly, and I think one thing that differentiates us from traditional insurance is the access we have to the social data. So what we want to do in the future is eventually build what we're going to call an honesty score for each of our users, so much so that when you eventually put in a claim, based on that score, we'll be able to actually either instantly pay out your claim or be prompted to do a bit more investigation.
I would like to see the former president's score. should get him to see if he can. Yeah, it'll be rather interesting. Yeah, no. By the way, I'm not very politically correct. My mother's given me a hard time about it as well, but she's getting over it. Mike, your hairy audacious goals for the future?
So, in our view, everybody should have an uKheshe wallet. So, just some of the use cases that I can explain to you. So, driving down the road and you want to buy a Coke from the side of the street, got no cash on you. You're able to pull out your phone, pay the 10 Rand for the Coke, just scanning a QR code. You park your car, somebody pushes your trolley from Pick and Pay or wherever you are, unpacks your goods and whatever else is. He's been looking after your car as a car guard. Again, look into your wallet. Sorry, no cash. Pull out your phone, scan him $5, $10, whatever it is that you want to be able to give. So what we would like in our big hairy audacious goal was that everybody has a uKheshe wallet to be able to allow them to pay the people that don't necessarily have bank accounts and everything else.
So, for micro enterprises, for example, in this country where we've seen our contraction in GDP, 3% plus in Q1, scary stuff. One of the best ways of actually adding value to our GDP is to empower the small micro enterprises, and that could be a phenomenal tool to do that with.
100%. And we're talking to a lot of people in terms of smart spaza shops. If you look at the building industry as an example, there's the wages component of it. There's still huge amounts of wages that are paid in South Africa via cash. So you've got a building contractor who's going on a Friday morning, he's going to the bank to go and draw 20, 30,000 Rand, whatever the number is, putting them into envelopes to be able to go to the building site to go and pay 10, 15 people their wage packets. The amount of risk that goes with that and the amount of people that are getting robbed.
Yeah.
And then you take that one step further and you say that building contract, the builder has now been paid, he's dressed as a builder. Everybody knows that builders are paid on a Friday afternoon their wages. So he jumps into a taxi and gets mugged in the taxi because they know he has cash on him. We've got a lot of building contractors that are now moving across to uKheshe because it's as simple as either scanning a QR code to be able to do it, and we've got other methods that you can pay as well, where there's a portal that you can log into to be able to pay wages. All of those wages are then settled. They can then go and withdraw the cash at any point whenever they need, without having the risk of carrying large amounts of cash with them. So
wonderful stuff. So I don't know if you agree with me, but these are certainly trailblazing businesses in this country. They deal with, I think, some core issues, and I think especially the people who are left behind in South Africa. We talk about tech, and unless you got a big fancy this and a big fancy that, you're sometimes left in the dust. And that's a challenge, though, because if we want people to become economically active, we are going to need solutions like this, to get people to be part of the solution of this
100%.
country.
And I think as well, if you look at it, the penetration of smartphones is definitely getting more and more and more. So, as the years progress, we're going to get less and less feature phones and what we call dumb phones that are out there. But at this stage, if you're a person who's living below the poverty line, you're not going to have a smartphone to be able to access a lot of technology that's out there.
Yeah.
So as a result, you need to cater for those people that are there via USSD, via different methods to be able to communicate. So 100%.
I want to talk about some of the challenges, though, because these are brilliant businesses, but I'm sure you've had sleepless nights. You didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, great idea, let's code it. And then people just threw money at you and you did your R&D and all of a sudden you got your traction. Life doesn't work like that, right? I always also say that it's not the money that's the problem unless you're going to the bank for the money because they want you to have a 4 million Rand house. Sorry to anybody who works for a bank here, but so getting access to market is the key thing. If you have access to market, then people can start tabulating. Okay, I'm working with a Pick and Pay. I'm working with a Tsogo. I'm working with a massive insurance company, etc., to get the product out. I'm working with the Western Cape government or National Health. Now I can start going, okay, yeah, this looks like something that I can invest in. How easy is it, though, to get access to that market, whether B2C or B2B? Because with tech, you know what it's like? Depends who the suit is that you're sitting in front of.
I think
some people are scared.
You're 100% right. I think the biggest challenge, for my sins, we're a software development company as well, and regularly I sit down with people that have great dreams and aspirations to be able to do things. And people think that the technology part is the difficult part. The technology part is the easiest part. The most difficult part is getting it out there, getting people to know about it, because that's expensive.
Yep.
It takes a long time. People don't understand how long it takes to be able to get things out there. You know, in Uber, when it came through and it's just revolutionized and it's great, and we're getting these tech platforms from overseas, and they're 5, 10, 15 years old. They've gone through the growth patterns. They've gone through stabilizing everything that's there in terms of the apps and whatever. But actually, you know, from startup to growing it and telling people about it and trying to market it and going through the likes of Facebook and Twitter, and then, you know, you want to go and have a look at billboards, or you want to go on the radio and things like that. Above the line marketing is hugely expensive to be able to get out there. So I don't know if everybody else has found the same thing.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is talk about those challenges, and then I want to come back and talk about the lessons you've learned and how you've adapted, because I think, you know, it's always a good take home, some of those lessons learned. So let's talk about 3 words and the challenges. It wasn't plain sailing, I would imagine.
Not at all, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, until everybody in this room would know fully what they're talking about and would know the 3-word address of this building, we haven't achieved our goal. So we're on the way. Education, actually, in 2 respects, I'll echo what Mike said. Education, firstly, in terms of getting the word out. It's really hard to go viral. As cool as your idea is, it's actually really hard, and you won't necessarily be impacting or reaching the people that you need to reach, because they won't have a smartphone, or they just might not be exposed to traditional above-the-line media. And education also in terms of, and we've seen this, you know, you talked about big businesses earlier, and I don't know if you've seen this in insurance, maybe you have, I'm guessing you have. The larger businesses that it makes sense to partner with in this country, whether it's retail or insurance or banking or whomever, there's a fear of new things, firstly, and of technology generally. And I think that also relates to education, because there isn't necessarily the education of people in basic tech skills. So the number of CEOs that I've seen totally wrangled by a tech team that just decides, no, we're not going to do it, bro. And then what? It's actually astonishing. And that's because there isn't that innate empowerment that the CEO has to say, no, I know what kind of sprint you need to do to get this done over the next 2 weeks. No, I know what needs to happen here. You can do this. You do have the capacity. Because they just don't know, they're terrified.
Absolutely.
And they're actually held hostage by it in many ways. So that's not something that we can actually impact either. So unless you start to see that broad scale, basic tech education coming through and really bleeding into different generations, startups are going to have a problem.
Well, that definitely stifles your access to market if you're sitting in front of that CEO. Everybody says, go in at the top. But if the person at the top doesn't understand the first thing about what you're doing, they're not going to want to look stupid, so they're going to nod, they're going to feel stupid, and then they're going to go back going, I don't think I want to invest in this. Because I don't understand, not because you don't have a good product.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest challenge was overcoming the mindset that was created by the traditional insurance space. There's a saying in the insurance space that goes, insurance isn't bought, it's sold. So basically, you're dealing with an industry that's used to being very bullish in terms of like call centers calling you, hounding you, trying their best to get you onto the books. But then once you're on the books, the experience isn't really great. And when it comes time to make a claim, most of the times it's a hassle. It's difficult for you to actually get your claim paid out. So much so that when we actually launched our product and people actually started using it and they saw how seamless it was to get a policy, people would like send us messages on our chat interface and say, hey, listen, can I please call somebody just to make sure that this is legit? I need to speak to a human. I need human intervention. Because people literally weren't used to such a seamless experience in the insurance space. So for us, the biggest challenge was overcoming that mindset and that fear that people have towards insurance. And it's a challenge that we're still facing today, but slowly but surely we're starting to overcome it.
How exactly?
So there's a few techniques that we've started to use. Firstly, in terms of our positioning, like on social media and so forth. For instance, on like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, we've got a following of over 50,000. And if you compare that to your traditional insurance companies, they are probably sitting at about like 3,000, 4,000, and so forth. But the content that we share on our profiles is very personal, and that we engage with a lot of our followers. So it's not a case of us trying to get people just to follow us and see what we're doing. We make sure that we engage with their post and make them feel as if there's a human behind our actual profile. And other, marketing techniques that we do. So when we first launched, we went around Joburg, Pretoria, and Cape Town, and we handed out about 30,000 pineapples, the fruits, in see-through packets with a bit of our branding on it. And in cases where somebody's claim is, let's say, delayed, or somebody has an issue with the app, we actually either send them Uber Eats vouchers, or we actually send them pizzas to their door with pineapples on the pizza, just to keep them engaged and happy. So it's all of these small touches that make the experience more personal and actually build trust between the customer and us.
Best purchaser of Hawaiian pizzas.
Yeah, exactly.
And what you're saying is so important, though, because how many of you here, just a show of hands, walked into a room one day, saw someone who you really liked, and said to yourself, "Ooh, that person's got great character and a wonderful value system"? How many of you? No, you're lying. Unless you were looking.
The opposite is true, though.
I think he looked at himself in the mirror and said that. How many of you walked into a room and went, "Oh God, here she's hot"? See some hands. I won't tell your wives, your boyfriends. Hands, please. Okay, the rest of you must be single. Okay. It's about emotional engagement at the end of the day, and we use our limbic system. And that's the one thing, from a technology point of view, you can sometimes get divorced from the fact that you're dealing with human beings who engage, before they engage logically, they engage emotionally. And I think it's important, and it's, I felt like writing a book saying it's about sex, man. Because, that's really what it's about. It's that gut feel that draws you to someone. Now, obviously, once you're drawn to someone, hopefully you're not a total a-hole, because then that's the easiest way to get rid of someone. So your value that you propose has to live. Your value that you propose has to mean something and add value. And I think that is so key when it comes to technology businesses. And I was just saying to you earlier, the reason I got involved in tech was because I went to Holland as a member of the media, and we wanted to see what they were doing from a tech perspective. Oh my word. I was never as bored with jargon in my life. And
it's another AFA. I'll tell you later what that means.
WTF.
Exactly.
Well, anyway. So
another something acronym.
Exactly. But I want to come back, because I don't want my ADD to take over this discussion. I want to come back to those lessons learned. I think you've painted an absolutely amazing picture, and I think you've set a wonderful tone here in terms of how to overcome some of those challenges, the access to market. And I'd like to move to your businesses now, the lessons you've learned, the tricks that you employ in order to gain that traction.
I'd say, we've only recently shifted from a B2B to a B2C business, so now we're starting to engage with consumers. Yeah. And I think what you were saying about, and what Ndabenhle was saying about just people are people, actually, and engaging with that limbic system, or actually just recognizing their people, also counts in the sales, from a sales perspective, with big businesses. So as much as the CEO might be sort of nodding and slightly freaking out, someone in that room will probably understand it, and that person's your champion, and you find them. And this is classic sales. It doesn't matter about tech versus whatever. You nurture that person, and you make sure that they're on your side, that they get it, and they can push it. And I don't know if you guys found that with traditional partners or any of yours, but we've had to find those people, the people who instantly get it. There are going to be some people who just don't and who won't ever, and we're okay with that. That's cool. But then we find the people who do, and we crack on. It's also been about localization for us in a really big way in South Africa. So we're headquartered in the UK, and we operate literally in 170 countries globally. But for us, it's been about understanding, actually, you cannot have a cookie cutter approach. I think this is pretty standard stuff, but it's really, really integral. And understanding how South Africans, as an example, think about addresses. We don't actually really deal with GPS coordinates, which is fundamentally what our system is. It's just GPS coordinates turned into words. I can say that to a room of techies, and they get me, and they're like, cool. I can say to a room of consumers, and they go, latitude what? And that's a massive issue for us. So especially now pivoting to a consumer-facing point of view, we need to go, how do we talk about something that's quite technically, there's an incredibly patented algorithm behind the system, it's really complex, but actually it's not. It's just words for every 3 by 3 meters. So we need to start talking about it in a different way, and we need to start shifting our own perspective to actually get that wider consumer traction. And we're just starting with those experiments now.
It'd be interesting if you did treasure hunts with a big radio station, for example.
They are, Frank.
And well, I'm not.
Let's do it.
Fortunately, I'm not high enough up in that place. I'm just, I think it's fascinating just to, and there's never ever a cookie cutter answer to any of the challenges that you have. And it's one thing for us to say people think of the limbic system, but if you don't do your proper discovery, and if you don't do your actual work on the ground, how the heck are you going to know what's happening in certain markets? Mike, your perspective.
So, because we deal with cash, we deal with money, our biggest challenge is trust. So you get someone say, well, you can have I'm going to use inverted commas, quasi-bank account, because it's a digital wallet, but people don't know what that is. And to get them to put their money in and to receive money in, the first response is, cash is what I know, cash is in my hand, cash is there. So how do you get across that divide to be able to make people understand that it is safer, it is better, it is, and with us it's, one of the things that we found is we've got teams that are going out and they're actually going and giving people on the streets bibs like this. So this is a QR bib. So what you'll do is have a QR code like that, blown up, that fits in a little pocket in the front over here. And what you can see at the back is, guess what? These are all of the different people that I accept payments from now. All the different banks, etc. Anyone that's got a QR code. So our teams, though, go and take these to the street vendors and hawkers and all of those type of things. And you go to them and the first reaction is, not quite sure. And what we do is, let's show you. Give him a bib, sign him up with a card, with one of these, scan him 20 Rand or whatever it is, and put him in the car and say, come, let's go. You, from him, physically goes onto his phone, generates a token, goes to the teller and says, I want to withdraw my money, please. And the guy gives him 10 Rand or 20 Rand or whatever it is out the till. And all of a sudden his eyes are this big.
Wow.
Because it's all about trust. It's you're getting money into the ecosystem, that's fine. How do I get it out? And there's, no, you're scamming me. And it's getting over those hurdles to get people to be able to know that it is a trusted platform that's there. It is backed by, big organizations that have gone through the mill with it to make sure that it's all correct and above board, etc. And that's our biggest challenge, is as people find out about it on Twitter and on Facebook and everywhere else that it is, but it's, let's give it a go, let's try it. And the ones that do, they tell all their friends, and it's fantastic. And do you know what? You can take this and you can go get money. It's fantastic. But yes, it's that, like you say, engaging with the person instantly. You can't do that if you're doing it over a Facebook or over a Twitter or over a billboard that's on the side of Greyston Drive or wherever it is. It's that personal interaction.
Now, all of you deal with technology, and it was something that you alluded to earlier. I was just listening to Lyndsey, and you were talking about, the smartphones, and a lot of people don't have access, but the penetration is obviously increasing. That is a big problem, though. It's a big challenge. Do you find, and maybe for insurance, you've got a core target market, and you only care about the people who have phones that can take the photograph, and your AI does the rest? Maybe I'm wrong, though. Are there lots of people who ask about, but what about those who don't have access to smart technology to be able to, get onto a pineapple? What about those people? How is that going to limit your growth on this continent?
That's a very valid consideration, and it is a bit unfortunate that currently our app is only limited to working on smartphones. But we definitely do have future plans to sort of roll out an equivalent that is accessible on your less smartphones, and that's something that's high up on our priority. In terms of rolling out products to the rest of the population in South Africa, I think the one thing that has always fascinated me is that if you actually look at social media and a lot of the pop culture references that come up, so the most recent one is, let's say, the whole Ndabenhle thing, the Ndabenhle saying. It fascinates me how quickly that spreads around, a country like South Africa, even though we have these limitations such as the cost of data and so forth. And that tells me that people, if there's something that appeals to the masses, they'll make a plan to get to it, whether that be accessing Wi-Fi somehow or, asking a friend to download it for them and sending it to them. So that leads me to believe that if you can actually craft a product that appeals to someone on a more personal level, they will find a way to get to it. And that's something that I'm holding dear to me. And when we get to the point where we start rolling out our product to the rest of the market, I'd like to keep that at the front of my mind.
Or maybe your strategy is to be hyper-focused. You concentrate on people who have smartphones.
Well, I think sorry to interject, but I think that there's also ways and means that you can do things. So, for example, if you take an app, so a traditional app that you have on Android and iOS, and I might be getting a bit too techie here, I do apologize, but let's say it's I don't know, 10 megs or whatever it is, 20 megs to be able to download. And where the problem comes in, especially with the lower down the market that we found, is that they'll download the app potentially once. Number one, it costs them a lot of money to be able to download the app. But number two, any update that you do, they don't actually update apps. So it becomes very difficult to be able to give them new features and things like that. And that's where something like a progressive web app comes into play.
Yes.
Where, and I'm not sure, I might be again glazing over a couple of people, but what that is it looks, it feels, it works like an app. However, it's actually just a website in the back end, which means then that it's 100K or something, which costs you nothing to be able to download the app. There's no size behind it or anything like that. And when you're accessing it, you're always accessing the latest version of it. So, and it's not having to download and keep downloading apps. I mean, if I think of the amount of times I wake up in the morning and have 10 downloads, 20 downloads to be able to, and I'm okay. I've got Wi-Fi at home, so it's not an issue. But for people that don't have access to that, you need to bear these things in mind. So when you're going after a target market that is lower down the economic scale, you need to take into account and do things like progressive web app. Or we found one of the big things as well is people don't necessarily have airtime. So, dialing a USSD string can become difficult because they don't have airtime. But however, they've got WhatsApp. So they'll sign up with the bundle. The bundle's got free WhatsApp from the network providers. So nowadays you can start doing things. WhatsApp's allowed you to launch, and Absa I think is the first bank that's actually done it, where you can do banking via WhatsApp. It's in our roadmap at this present moment in time to be able to launch uKheshe via WhatsApp. So you can log in, you can do a transfer to someone. So let's say you want to transfer to Granny who's in Limpopo, no problem. You put a cell phone number in, hit the button via WhatsApp, and it transfers out your wallet to Granny in Limpopo. Done. Very easy to be able to do it, but you have to take that into account. You need to think of your target audience that's there, and don't think of them that they've got, plenty of data and it's all around and it's everywhere, because it's not.
Interestingly, we're literally in the process of building a progressive web app for that very reason. There's also ways though to just shift and completely rethink how you actually access some of those people who will never have a smartphone, who live in incredibly rural areas, that sort of thing. And that's where our work with, or what we hope our work with government departments will do. We actually have a GIS specialist who's built a very cool little piece of equipment that takes satellite imagery and automatically lays a 3-word address grid over those images to automatically assign a 3-word address to every informal dwelling, not formal buildings, informal. And it's the first of its kind in the world, and the developing world will snap it up because suddenly governments can have a real picture of who's living in what area in informal structures. So there's ways then that you can use that data. Even think of the census, think of Department of Health getting ambulances to an area. Think of just the post office giving everybody an address. Using that data by going the other way and actually doing a top-down approach, you can actually then get to those communities and even we've worked with NGOs and the likes to literally print everybody in a certain community their own 3-word address sign that they can either put on their door, or we print them a sticker that they usually keep in their Bible so that if they need to access those services, they can use that.
Is that dynamically updated though? Because, let's talk about the red ants. And we seem to have them in the Western Cape as well. You've got informal structures, human beings living there, gets torn down, and next week it doesn't exist. Does that pose a bit of a challenge?
Well, we're reliant on satellite imagery, and until we get to the stage of funding where we can launch our own satellite, we're not quite there. So, we're reliant on whatever satellite imagery is available.
Sure.
Various mapping providers have different imagery, by the way, which people don't realize. So Google Maps will have different imagery to Apple, to Mapbox, to etc. So they actually look different, and that's why Google Maps in this country works relatively well. It doesn't exist in Mongolia. You cannot navigate with Google Maps in Mongolia. Equally, there's a different mapper in Mongolia that works amazingly, and it wouldn't work here at all. So there's different maps for different parts of the world, and we like to think that we can work with all of them.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Just one insight from my side. You've been answering each other's questions as well. Hopefully, after this discussion, you take each other's details. And the one thing, Lyal, I'm hoping to achieve with these type of discussions is to actually network. We talk about collective intelligence once again. If we all, because entrepreneurs can sometimes be so, they navel gaze, and you don't touch this. You know, if someone else can do the damn thing better than you, you shouldn't be doing it. But if you work together with people and you start adding value to each other, you know, like the dynamic, the web apps. I mean, maybe that's something that could be considered if you're not doing it already. You know, how would photography and taking the photo be integrated into that? You know, I mean, those sort of things. So I'm hoping that people actually use the networking session after this to exchange. You've got APSA right over there. You've got a lot of people doing lekker goed. I'm just encouraging everybody not to navel gaze, to share, to ask questions. Don't feel stupid about asking certain questions. Because does anybody know anything in this place? Does anybody know everything? Can I see your hand, other than you? Yeah, I thought so. So what if we could actually be, you know, we sort of irrigate our own minds through other people's knowledge. And that is what I'd like to see. So South Africa, wonderful continent. Of course, South Africa is part of Africa, contrary to popular belief. And the challenges, I think, that are not unique to South Africa, something that obviously is a continent-wide phenomenon, is job creation. And sometimes when you talk about technology, it's not synonymous with job creation, which is a hurdle. My question is, how do you deal with that? Let's start with you, Mike.
So I think we viewed it from two different aspects. So one is a little bit more inwardly focused, and the second is outwardly. So let's start with the outwardly first. So we view this uKheshe card as, think of it as the cheapest POS machine that you can have in the country right now. Every single dealer, guy on the side of the street, even a beggar on the side of the street who's begging for, you know, R5 or whatever it is, could have an uKheshe wallet and be able to be paid digitally via a debit or credit card loaded into an app. So from an accepting payments perspective, that's where we view a lot of our you know, giving back to the communities, etc. And with that comes, you know, if you think of a car guard, so how often do you go to a car guard and go, sorry, no change? So we've got this hashtag that we have been going around on Twitter and things, you know, no change, no excuse. Because a lot of the times you get there, and personally I'm guilty of this as well. I'd very happily give somebody R5 for looking after my car. And if he gets 5 or 10 extra tips during the day because he's actually able to accept digital payments, that means he has a decent meal that night. And that's how we're giving back. The second is as well, we've actually got a referral program within uKheshe as well, where people can sign up, and then if other people are active and sign up, they can actually earn income out of that as well. So from a viral marketing type of perspective as well, although it is very difficult to be able to go viral, we've started doing that as well. So, but that is to be able to grow the word and tell people about it and how it all works, etc. as well. So one is a little more inwardly focused than the other.
Absolutely. And, you know, everybody talks about going viral, though. I can't understand that. Surely well, I can, and I can't. I'll explain to you why I can't. It's simply because it depends on what you want to achieve at the end of the day. If you want to convert, you know, people who work in factories to your product, you're probably better served getting a niche of factory owners who can help educate and get the word across. So I do think that when we talk about communicating, when we talk about getting the message across, one needs to be very careful about not just wanting to do the shotgun approach, and rather say, hey, who are our biggest cheerleaders that we can use to get the message out there?
100%, and I think it's much easier to do a B2B sale than it is where you go and engage with one business than to be able to get a B2C.
Yeah.
Because that's marketing, it's very difficult to do. So as an example, we're engaging with a lot of the fuel providers. So you go to a petrol station and fill up, and it's, you know, 800 Rand, 1,000 Rand to be able to fill up your tank. And again, you can't actually use your card to be able to tip tip the petrol attendants. So we're engaging with them and happy to brand this BP or Shell or Caltex or whatever it is. So as a CSI initiative for them to assist their staff to be able to roll it out across the country, for them to be able to receive tips. But there's also it becomes a bit more difficult as well, because there's the unintended consequences of what you're trying to do. So some of the fuel providers said, yes, that's fine, we want to do it. The problem comes where a petrol attendant goes up and says, sir, do you know that you can actually use this to pay for your fuel? Now you pay your 1,000 Rand onto the QR code that he's got hanging around his neck versus actually paying with your credit card, and then you drive off as though you've paid and he's got his 1,000 Rand sitting in his bank and then disappears, or he goes, no, the guy left. Those are the type of challenges that you have to overcome when actually trying to educate and put different technologies into different markets.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Pineapple. I'm going to come back to you on the job creation side. Big problem, challenge job.
So funny enough, I had this conversation with somebody last week. I was fortunate enough to be in Kenya for the week, and I was having a conversation with an individual from Norway, and he said, listen, I'm trying to start this startup here in Kenya, but there's no talent, there's no developer talents in Kenya, what must I do? And I was just thinking to myself, like, nothing could have been as far from the truth as what he was saying. And just bringing it back here to South Africa, and it's something that I would say that the Afrikaans community does extremely well, especially in Pretoria and Centurion. They create a space in the work environments where potential candidates who come forward have the possibility to put their best selves forward, being able to interview in your home language, being able to do technical assessments in your home language, being able to explain coding concepts in your home language. And that makes you feel more comfortable, and it puts the best version of yourself forward. And I think that's something that we lack in terms of giving the same space to African developers. We don't afford them the opportunity to interview in their home language or to do technical assessments in their home language. And it's unfortunate because a lot of us have unconscious biases that if somebody doesn't speak English the same way that you speak English, you might subconsciously think, okay, maybe this isn't the best candidates for me. And I think once you can actually start challenging and attacking those subconscious biases that you have, and you start creating a space in your work where people can thrive and be their best selves, then you'll start to unearth more talent, and that's when you can start addressing the issue of job creation, especially in the tech space.
And that's my final point really is going to be, and it's got to be future focused. How do we take young people on their journey with us? How do you envision this education system changing so that we don't have a little course here and a little course there, but there's this actual groundswell which happens at a public school system. That's what I want to end off with. But before we do that, Lyndsey, from your perspective, job creation, is it something up there at the forefront?
I think there's, and broadly speaking, having worked in a number of different tech ecosystems, I think there's a lot of anxiety around the question of unemployment and job creation, and oh boy, AI is going to take my job, and chartered accountants are probably doomed. But there's certain things. It's the world moves and industries evolve and careers change, and there's that adage which says kids in school now are training for jobs that don't even exist yet because we can't see what's coming. When I was in high school and university, I would have never even considered that this was a job that I could do because it didn't exist yet, because people are coming up with these incredible technologies every day which are just changing the landscape. And I think there'll always be, much like the horse was displaced when cars and trucks and lorries were invented, there will be a way that people figure out this new landscape, and there'll always need to be somebody to wrangle the tech. There'll always need to be somebody to understand and switch on the AI, or it's a simplified version, but there's always going to need to be that human interaction. And I think you'll just start to see a different focus in terms of how we develop our careers. You cannot teach a machine emotional intelligence yet. If it passes the Turing test, then we are all doomed. But that aspect, and actually people engagement and that sort of thing, you can't teach a machine to do. And that I don't think can ever be replaced. So I think there's a lot of anxiety. It's maybe slightly misplaced. I understand how South Africa particularly might not be in a space where we're ready for this. There's a lot of buzzword for IR being knocked around, and government, with respect, probably doesn't really fully understand what that means or how they're going to implement any sort of measures to address the coming technology wave. But I think we all just need to just take a breath, and I think it'll be okay.
Totally agree with you. We talk about Alan Turing and his test. I think the 2-year-old test is probably the better one. If you watch, how many of you got kids? I won't ask you how many. All right. So you all have children, right? So some of them are older, some of them are young, but you watch them growing, and they get to this point where they hit 2 years old, 3 years old, and you look at how their level of intelligence hops and jumps and jumps and jumps, and they start stringing sentences together. Never mind syntactic parsing and all that sort of stuff. If you look at how they do it, that is true intelligence. And, you know, I don't think we're going to get there within the next 80 to 100 years, I don't think, where machines can learn that way. Which brings me to my next question. We've all been very tech-focused, but let's talk about how important other skills are, like understanding human beings, like lifting your head up from a computer and going, hey, there's another human being there, and the importance of actually understanding humans within this whole 4IR craze that we're talking about. Who'd like, I'm not going to pick anybody. You choose who wants to go. Go for it.
Fundamentals, people are people. It doesn't matter whether you're speaking to a CEO or somebody who needs the uKheshe app on the side of the road or somebody who needs to insure their drone. People are people, and you need to approach people as a person, and they will have certain things that switch them on and certain things that switch them off, and it's your job to try and figure out if your product or your service fits into what you can do together. But that's the fundamental, and it's I think it's a fundamental of business as well as anything that we do in tech. I think you do tend to see that not necessarily encouraged enough in possibly tech and product teams who really get stuck into the code and build the products, and they don't necessarily interact with the last end user maybe enough. But
building apps for the sake of building apps.
Exactly.
How many apps are there out there? Because everybody has to have an app. Why? Have you actually engaged with customers to see why? The amount of people that download an app once and then never use it again and delete it off afterwards because it's actually not adding any value to what they're doing, but yet you have to have an app.
Yeah.
You need to actually go back to the reasons why and engage with the customers to be able to find out what they want.
And to keep it simple, because we're all bloody lazy, right?
100%. Is it fulfilling a need?
Yeah.
simple is the hardest thing, though.
Exactly.
From a tech perspective.
Simple is the hardest thing. Everybody, you know, you immediately, if you open an app or open up a web browser, if the UX is wrong, your user experience, you'll know immediately and you'll go, and want to chuck the computer out the window. That is the most difficult thing to get right. And whether it's an app or if it's a web platform like ours or if it's built into another person's system, understanding how humans speak to a machine and how they engage with that machine is probably the most difficult thing to crack.
Netflix is a very good example. Before, you didn't know what the bloody trailer looked like. So you had to go and play and figure out, is this something I want to watch? Now, you just take your little cursor thingy. Thanks for all the time I had in Joburg yesterday. I think I watched about 3 Netflix flicks. It was wonderful doing absolutely nothing. And I just take the cursor and I go over and this thing starts playing a trailer and I'm going, shit, I like that. And I click on it. So it's about, but it's how, you know, it's an evolution at the end of the day to
I think as
reach,
well, we're very spoilt that a lot of the apps that we're using nowadays are coming from an international background. So they have been tested, they have gone through the mill. So by the time we get them, they are slick and polished and everything just works. And you know, what people don't realize is that when you're doing software development, and whether it's an app or anything else, it's a journey, it's not a destination. And you know, if I'll use an example, who here is actually insured with Discovery? Did anybody notice that when Discovery launched their app, right, what was that, 3-4 years ago, whenever it was terrible. The thing never worked, and they go, this vitality thing, and it's, you know, all of that, whatever, it was horrible. But now you enter into it, and it's fantastic, it's slick, it's just you click the button and off it does, and it does its thing. But it's taken them 4 years and huge amounts of budget to be able to get to that. When you're a tech startup, with you don't have unlimited funds to be able to build things, you know, and you need to bear that in mind as well when you're starting to use apps and you're using technology. You know, nothing's perfect from day one. You want to get to that point, but it's a journey. It's not a destination.
And the people who want to be perfect up front don't start businesses.
Correct.
So the process that we followed when we started building Pineapple is something called design thinking. And basically what this is, it's a methodology where you're always putting the customer first at every single decision that you make. So starting from the ideation phase, when you're starting from the needs finding phase, when you're actually starting to look at the needs that the customers actually have, you should go around and interview customers and see, hey, listen, what are the biggest problems that you guys have in XYZ industry. Then you go into ideation, where you start coming up with potential ideas that could, address these needs. And once again, you go back to the customer and say, hey, listen, I have these concepts that I'm working on. Would this help to solve your problem? Then you go on to sort of mock up, MVP wireframes of your product, which basically entails you going onto a piece of paper and drawing what your app screens would look like, and walking around to potential customers and saying, hey, listen, guys, this is what our app might look like. Just please hold these pieces of paper and just, turn through the app journey. Is this something that appeals to you, and is this an intuitive flow to you? And from there, you actually go on to mock up Photoshop version of those same screens of how the actual app will look. And this is exactly the process that we followed. Even before we wrote a single line of code, we got to the point where we knew exactly what the problems that the customers had were and how we were going to address them. And this helped us avoid the situation where we'd invest so much time and money building something that actually at the end doesn't even address the needs of the customer.
Wow.
So design thinking, I would say, has been critical to
Without a
us.
doubt. So you're all, is that a Casio you're wearing?
Yeah, it's a Casio. Old school.
Old school. We're having, and I think the point there is sometimes, too much tech and too much of tech. We also need to realize that human beings sometimes want to go back to something which just brings back the memories, something which is, once again, that emotionally engages you, right? Takes you back. How old are you? I mean, I'm not going to say how old you are. But I remember, I'm an old fart. I remember when those came out. And
remember when the calculator watch came out?
Yeah.
Dude, that was so cool. If anybody knows where I can buy the calculator watch, just let me know. Okay, so I want to go to the floor now. I'm sure there are 300 million questions. But I'm going to ask each of you, because keeping it simple is the hardest thing. I'm going to give each of you a minute to talk about the education system you'd like to see, and you're not allowed to repeat what someone else has said.
Education system?
Just the South African education system that we have at the moment. We're all talking about, this future that doesn't exist. But we still need to prepare some sort of skills flow that'll feed what we don't know about in the next 12 years. So what are the core things we need to...
Can I tell you where I'd start?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Just because otherwise everyone's going to say everything first.
Okay, you're allowed to repeat. I've just changed the rules. Go for it.
Yeah. I think there is an infatuation with that everything's going to change and you won't have skills to be able to enact in the future.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to be able to move across to the UK for a number of years when I was still a bean counter. And what I found very interesting was that chartered accountants in the UK do not study accounting. You can have a geography degree, you can have a biokineticist degree, you can be a doctor and become a chartered accountant. It meant nothing about what you had studied, because studying was purely there to show that you can learn and you learn how to learn. So skills can be taught. So I think the education system needs to teach people how to think. What they can do later with, once they've learned how to think, you can go into any branch. I don't write a line of code, but I know how tech all fits together and how it works, and I can talk to techies to be able to do it. But I'm a chartered accountant. I'm not. I haven't learned about Python languages and to be able to program in C and all those type of things. So those skills can be taught, and I think there's this huge infatuation by you have to study what it is that you're going to do.
You have hit your minute.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll kick my soapbox back under the chair.
No, I'd echo that. I'd say it's actually about getting the fundamentals right more than anything. The number of people who come out of school and don't understand the basics of compound interest in finance. It's a problem. Because that leads to debt spirals, and then you don't know how to get out of it. The number of people who don't understand how to open a bank account, hopefully they will need to eventually, but the actual fundamentals are the more important thing, because I agree with Mike and never contribute, but it is actually about just giving somebody enough fundamental knowledge and ability to think through something critically that allows them to then pursue. The number of stockbrokers in the UK and the US who studied art history would shock you. Because it's not about the skills. It's just about, you can teach skills, as you say. So it's those fundamentals. I think there's a hell of a lot more to get right in South Africa before we even get to the stage of holistic education, but it's a start.
Yeah, so I went to university and studied BCom accounting with my honours in tax, but early on in my studies...
Shame. I feel your pain.
I was exposed to coding, and I started dedicating all my free time to self-teach myself. So much so that when I finished school, I took up a job as a developer as opposed to doing articles, and that's merely because I was exposed to coding at university. So much so that had I known that early on in matric what I knew then, I probably wouldn't have gone to university. I would have just hit the ground running and started self-teaching myself coding. And I think that's what's missing in the SA education system, is exposing people to these skills at a very early stage. Because I wrote my first line of code when I was 20, and I was old. That's old. But if we can get guys, catching on to that when they're much younger, then you can put them in a position where they can make those type of informed decisions earlier on.
So you've come far in 2 years then, hey?
What a charmer.
I just want to do a shout out then along the lines of coding education. There are some incredible non-profits in this country that are doing amazing work. Sponsored by corporates who are training people up, like We Think Code and Codex and others, and Alpha Code, I think, who are literally taking, as long as the young person, I won't say kid, as long as the young person can think, they sort of test them and then they plug them into an intensive coding program that does the most incredible things. There's no university required, anything like that. They come out at the end of 9 months or 2 years, depending on the program. The corporates snap them up because tech skills in this country is a massive deficit, and they start earning ridiculous salaries at the age of 20 to whatever it is. So there's amazing programs that probably need a hell of a lot more support, both from the corporate sector and from government, that are starting to expose younger people to those sorts of skills.
I just want to, can we just please give them a hand? I think it was a phenomenal chat to all. Well done for actually achieving what you have thus far. And just one stat I want to leave you with before I take some questions. Grade 4s. How many of them, what percentage of them can't read to understand? Anybody know?
82.
70? Around 75%. If you don't get ECD right, if you don't get someone to be able to look at what's on Udemy and understand what they're reading on Udemy or LinkedIn, what's it called, LinkedIn Learning now these days, how in the world are they going to progress and develop their knowledge? So if you are part of a corporate and you are able to make an investment somewhere, I did an interesting chat on CSI not too long ago, and I said a lot of people think they want to feed kids. That's great, but if 10,000 CSI managers only want to feed kids, who the hell's going to teach them how to read to understand? So I just want to leave that with everybody. So are there any questions? Your hand was up first. And because you've been such a great sport. Your name, where you're from, and then your question.
My name is Dale Deacon. We are VR community here in Rosebank. I'm really fascinated by the question of mental health and by extension peak performance. And as digital leaders, I'd like to pose the question, how do you guys keep yourselves right at the top of your game? Reading books, exercise, etc.
I must say, an iPad is a great thing. So in the evenings, it's whether it's catching up on news, catching up on tech, what's happening, reading. Udemy, you mentioned Udemy. I find Udemy really cool. So if there's anything that's there that you want to have a look at, it's 100 Rand give or take to be able to download a course, and you can go through a lot of learnings from that. So
probably balance. It's really easy to get pulled into something and then spend weekends and nights, and sometimes that's required when you're building a business, but other times you just need to go to bed because it'll still be there in the morning. And it's also, I think, really important, we have a team here in Joburg, and it's really important for me to set the example for them. I would never expect them to answer an email at 3 a.m. When they are working, we want them to be really productive, and we try to set that example as well, but there needs to be some balance, because long term, if they burn out, everything's ruined. So we actually need to take care of people, and we make sure that it's a very people-centric approach. If you take care of people, the business will, hopefully by virtue of that, be taken care of.
So for me personally, it's meditation and quiet time. I think for me that helps a lot, especially early in the mornings and before I go to bed. In terms of our actual employees, we have a philosophy that is hard on task but soft on people. So we are always understanding of people's circumstances, and I think when it comes to people that work in a team with you, it's never a surprise when somebody's performance just goes haywire. You'll always have signs that pop up, early on, and it's just about being able to pick up on those signs and give somebody the space to be able to discuss to you what's going on and what's going wrong. I think what tends to happen, at least in big corporates, is that you have all these big teams and you have maybe one manager, but the manager is so disconnected from the team members on a human level, so much so that they never pick up on those things. And then one day somebody just has a mental meltdown, and the manager is surprised, thinking, okay, where did this come from? But you might find that months before, like the signs are already showing, but the manager didn't have the EQ to pick up on that. So it's about those soft skills.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, you know what, if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after others. So it's so important. Everybody talks about work-life balance. I mean, it depends on who you are and what your needs are. But I mean, every second, because I've now moved down to Cape Town, I've been there for the last 7 years, I take a 10, 11K walk on Bloberg Beach every second day. That's what I do. I've got the ocean, just clear my mind. It takes me 2 hours. But I make time. I shorten the amount of times I have in meetings. I say to people, if you want to meet me, that's great. I've got 20 minutes later this week, or I've got an hour and a half in a month and a half from now. And people choose the 20 minutes. Maximize the time you also have available to yourself, because some of the meetings you sit in.
Meetings for the sake of meetings?
For the sake of meetings. Do you really need an hour to sit down with someone? Do you? No. So make enough time so that you have enough time for yourself. And if your own mental health is spot on, you'd be able to take care of everybody else around you, especially if you're a leader within your business.
You also need a beach.
You need a beach. You can always, hey, don't you have a dam somewhere? Hartbeespoort, it's not too far away. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colin from the London Center for Math Science and Technology. I run math and science programs in township and rural schools.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for all your contributions. I think it's very wonderful, especially the innovation that I'm getting from yourselves. But one thing that is coming, which is common from all of you, even if you seem to be running different products, but one thing that is common is the people that you want them to utilize the product, especially Mike. I heard you talking about the difficulties, especially reaching the people. In terms of the demographics, if I look at what you are doing, I may be corrected, but I think your biggest target is the people in the rural areas.
Yes.
I think that's your biggest target. How are you speeding up the rate at which you are reaching those people in those rural areas? Because those are the people that even today I can send e-wallet. It will take time for those people even to get access to that money. They have to travel to one central place. They have to queue. There are not even banks, no queue. They have to queue, take the money and go back and buy in the spaza shops. Spaza shops, they only accept cash. They don't have those. So how are you speeding up the rate at which you are reaching those people, especially in the rural areas? I can tell you, if you can get it right in the rural areas, boom, that one.
Absolutely.
The way you're doing it. Because the rural areas, that is where I think is your biggest target market.
Sure, and 100% agree. And if there's anybody that can give us pointers on how to do that, I'd be willing to be able to listen, because I think our target at this present moment in time is centralized around underbanked or unbanked people within city environments, because that's where you find the pick and pays and you find the likes of that. When you go into rural areas, you don't necessarily find pick and pays. So we are as well onboarding and looking at different retailers, number one, different banks, etc., that we can plug into to be able to offer the services so that it's more wide-reaching. But our target market, although Pick n Pay has 1,600 stores around the country, it's still not everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But internet is also a human right. Access to data, affordable data. That's why they call it a human right as well. I mean, government, you worked with DTI. I didn't mention it right up front. But when we talk about governments needing to create an environment conducive to, this is part of it. Now, just a quick one. Saldanha Bay Municipality. They started doing their own micro-trenching. So if you want to lay fiber, if you work in the telecoms industry, one of the most expensive components, the most expensive component, is actually doing the trenching, right? To be able to lay the cables to get the access. And the reason why a lot of these fiber companies go to rich places or the leafy suburbs first is that's where they can do the fiber, charge their premium, and make back their return on investment. And the mayor of Saldanha Bay said, stuff this, I've got a lot of poor people, 24% of the young people, sorry, so you the word kids, 24% of the young people in my area matriculate. So how the heck am I going to overcome that? We need to give people access to digital. So with Stellenbosch University, they worked on risk. And they did micro-trenching. Didn't cost the municipality a cent. Now Cell C and MTN and these companies can go and lay fiber and put it in the poorest homes in the area and create access. So government needs to think innovatively in terms of creating. So, you know, it's good to ask the corporates, you know, how they're doing that. But it's a partnership. And we need innovative people willing to take risks, and we need entrepreneurially minded people in government to be able to make those choices. Sorry, before I come to you, there was, yes. Come to you next.
I'm in a family business law and financial services advisory. My question is for Mike, and thank you to everyone else who's very great presentation. Is there a risk around theft? So we're removing the actual physical holding of cash, and now you guys are holding QR code. Is there a risk that someone can steal that particular QR code?
So if the QR code is stolen, then all the money goes with it.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm kidding. No, this is just a piece of plastic that allows you to be able to identify the wallet. So your wallet is actually paired with your cell phone. So everything is centered around your cell phone. So to be able to make transfers, to be able to do anything, you have to have access to that cell phone. And if that cell phone goes, it's actually not the cell phone itself, it's actually the number that you've got. So if the cell phone gets stolen, you get a replacement SIM, then it's all fine. We also do have from we send a specific code to the person as well. So if they lose their cell phone and can't get the number back, etc., there's a way to be able to transfer it to another number as well. So all the security around that is there. Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll come back to you because you guys work in the same placement. So I just wanted to. I'll get back to you. Hold on. You introduce yourself and the question.
My name is Ndabenhle. I'm from a startup called Banka. So basically, we're trying to integrate all the what's from one place. So my question is mostly maybe for the founders, and I want to find out what are the personal traits that you think every founder needs to either learn or have to actually be successful in whatever.
The ability to overcome rejection. Because everywhere you go, even though it's the greatest idea, you're going to go to people and they're going to say no. And you're going to go to corporates and you're going to tell them that it's phenomenal and they're going to see you as a competitor and they're going to say no. And there's the ability to overcome rejection.
I'm not a founder, but just to add to that, the corollary is the ability to say no. So the ability to prioritize and to focus, and even if something really shiny catches the corner of your eye and you think, oh, just to go, actually, we can't do that, even if it looks like an incredible opportunity, because there's a fundamental something that you need to build or achieve. So, yeah, saying no is just as important.
I would say not being your own worst enemy. I think as a founder, a lot of the journey actually happens in your mind. And it's about just always winning and overcoming that battle in your mind and always backing yourself and believing yourself and not being too hard on yourself, especially when things don't go your way. So if you can always win that battle in your mind, you'll be fine.
And also that cliched saying, surrounding yourself with people who are more intelligent than you are and being big enough to understand your role within that context. Very essential, because we all think we need to have all the answers, but we don't. We don't.
Okay. Dalisum Goma here, again with Dale from Lyal. The question I just wanted to pose to Mike was, again, I think with the finances, is that I think the ease of use of using a number seems great. But I was just wondering as to the KYC, comparing it to the big banks where they need your ID number. I think Time has done a great job where you just punch in your ID number, use your fingerprint, and it goes to the Department of Home Affairs. So just wondering as to what are the limits on the bank account?
Sure.
Whereas
we're not a bank account.
Yeah. Well, actually on the facility itself, because I know time I think is around like 24,000. I think Mobi money from Nedbank is around 20,000.
Correct. So we've got daily and monthly limits, and again that comes from anti-money laundering legislation. So our limits are 3,000 rand a day and 24,000 rand a month, without going through a full RICA process.
Okay, well, I've neglected the back of the room.
My name is Carol Ndamenhle. I'm a founder of an organization called Self for Change. So we're using technology to develop teachers in ECD in rural areas and townships.
That's fantastic.
Brilliant.
That's awesome. We need more people like you.
Some of the most important work in the world, man. Yeah.
But obviously, I don't have to give context regarding education in South Africa. But I want to challenge Mike. I wonder if you would be willing to hear us out, because at the moment we are using apps that have been developed by other organizations. So we have challenges and when the apps are down or accessing the app to use them. So I don't know if your organization would be willing to work in that space, ECD space, help us to develop an educational app to use it in these communities.
Sure, we can talk, no problem. So we view ourselves as call it open source / open payment mechanism / wallet, and actually use our walleting technology and payment mechanisms in their own apps / wallet / whatever else it is as well. So again, we're all about inclusion and playing nicely with everybody else, because I think that's the way forward.
In English, he gives you access to his platform.
Yes, you have access to
API is like a door.
Sorry.
API is like a door into.
Bit too much.
It means that you can plug into us with pleasure.
Okay, great.
For free.
Just Yona, and then we'll go at the back as well. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Paul. I'm from Anthony Attorneys and also a product called Mobilo. What we do is provide, or we want to do is provide access to justice through a digital platform. However, I've been struggling to get it up and running and so forth. And what I'm here to actually engage on is to find ways as to how, because I'm a lawyer. I'm an attorney, I want to help people in the rural areas and so forth, but in a digital and technological way. However, I don't know how to code. I didn't have 20 years or less than that to actually learn how to do it, and I'm almost 40. So my question is, how do I, and how can you advise us, especially I think Mike who's CA and went into that type of arena, what advice can you give me to say from just having the expertise in one field, how do you go that way? And I want to thank you guys as well for the insights on the challenges, because I experiencing similar things. And I want to commend you, Lyndsey, on the issue of the addresses, because from a lawyer's perspective, the sheriffs, they struggle to actually serve people with papers, especially in rural areas, or let's say squatter camps specifically. I think they can use that very well.
No, I don't think we're going to empower sheriffs.
Slightly negative,
As well, I wanted to ask you questions again with regards to the question of trust as well, as you said, and especially for clients who don't actually want to use bank accounts and rather want to keep the money under the mattress. For them to have this, the question comes in, what do you need? Let's say physical address. The guy on the street, he's probably going to say, what did you say, pick me up somewhere and you have an address there. Do you require an address, and do you get statements, and what if SARS tries to get hold of you?
Sure, there's lots of questions in.
All right. Whoa. Okay, I just want to, there's a lot there, and I want to give everybody an opportunity. So can we focus can we focus in on your core question?
Yeah, the challenges and the advice that I want to receive.
Okay, brilliant. All right, wonderful.
Sure, I think Kieno actually mentioned it early, is that if you don't have the experience or the know-how to be able to do something, surround yourself with people that do. So I'm very lucky in that in our organization we've got 4 founding partners, if you like, and all of us have completely different skill sets. 2 of them are phenomenal, and they do the late night 3 o'clock in the morning, send an email type thing and code, and we come up with an idea and let's allocate this into the app, and the next morning it's live. and it's working because they've got that skill set. We've got one of our other partners who's almost like an Elon Musk who wants to launch satellites to the moon, which is phenomenal. And then I'm sort of the bridge in between. So yeah, my advice would be surround yourself with people that have the skills that you don't.
And also clearly define the problem you're trying to solve. You can't, unless you, so you're saying you're trying to help people. The question is,
do they want help?
Do they want help, and what is the help that they actually need?
Just to add, there's the name escapes me, but there's a sort of, I think it's called GovChat, which is a new platform actually that's being launched so that just ordinary citizens can actually just chat to government and use online portals and that sort of thing. Sounds like there's a lot of alignment potentially with what you're doing, and I don't think they've covered the legal side necessarily.
Absolutely. GovChat. Any other? Okay, let's go. See, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. What kind of challenges are you guys facing as you scale up and out of the continent?
By the B2C shift, yeah. I mean, big, audacious goal, want to be the global standard of addressing, and ultimately consumers need to know what the hell we are. So we find the name, interestingly, what 3 words, most people automatically turn it into like 3 little words in their head, and they're like, what are your 3 little words or something? There's different ways you can talk about it, but we need basically just consumer awareness, which is very powerful. And then consumers start demanding the access to 3-word addresses in the system from the businesses and even the governments that they're dealing with. Yeah. So the businesses can drive it from a B2B2C perspective in the sense of telling their customers, like Mercedes-Benz, telling their drivers, hey, this is the new system you can use. We also want people to, tweet at, I don't know, Woolworths to say, I want my deliveries to a 3-word address, please. Or we're actually working with an awesome startup called Zulzi. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. It's 1-hour grocery delivery in Joburg and Cape Town and now Pretoria from Woolworths, Pick n Pay, Dis-Chem, a whole bunch. Those guys are amazing. You can also get stuff delivered to a 3-word address now. So it's about consumers from the business side knowing what they can do with the 3-word address, but also just generally demanding it of the businesses they deal with.
So should I repeat my second question?
It was about a PWA.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
Progressive web app.
So PWA is a progressive web app. And what it in effect does is it lightens the load on how much data is required for your app to run. So it's probably the future of where apps are going, but we're not there yet. It's a maturing technology. So again, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much tech, just shout. It's a maturing technology which recently has got most of the functionality that you can do with a standard app. You can run via PWA. So again, in first world countries and things like that, they're not really adopting it all that much because people there don't struggle with access to data, whereas in Africa we do.
Then the third one was, as you guys scale up and out across the continent, what are the big challenges that you face?
For us, it's integrations. So, the way our business model is panned out is that we partner up with insurance license holders in different jurisdictions. At least that's the plan. So currently in South Africa, we've partnered up with Compass Insurance to sell our all-risk product. We're currently in discussions with one of the large insurance providers to partner up with them for our motor insurance product. And, that's all well in South Africa, but as we go to other jurisdictions, the hardest part is integrating into the insurance back-end systems. And it's about, building out one layer that can cater out to the majority of those back-end systems in terms of integrations. And it's a bit difficult because all of these back-end systems have different integration requirements and they all make use of different integration protocols. So that's our biggest challenge right now. And we're still trying to find smart ways around that.
Okay, brilliant. Any other questions?
Hi everyone, Gabriella from Access, in digital tech marketing.
Oh, so you know all about WhatsApp?
All about it. Massively supported. So digital disruption, it's a massive buzzword, and I think just by virtue of your networks and what you do, what are some of the trends that you really are looking forward to in that sphere or greatly anticipating, especially in Africa and emerging markets?
To me, I think interoperability, that you've got all these different, whether it's apps and ecosystems and things like that, it's them actually all talking to each other to be able to give a seamless experience to the user, so that so everybody's not in their own little silo.
Yeah, I'd say general awareness. So again, that's related to smartphone penetration, but people just becoming more comfortable with tech. We still have a long way to go. But we're seeing uptake in, we actually had somebody order something from one of our partners to get something delivered to a 3-word address the other day in the middle of the tiniest town in the Northern Cape. And we looked on the satellite view to see where his address was, and he'd nailed it. It was his front door, and there was nothing else around him. We just took that as such a great sign that, like, okay, even people who are really far out from urban centres and might not necessarily have the access to the infrastructure and the tech that we think they do, are actually okay with this. And so it's developing, it's getting there.
I'd say mobile money growing to a point where you can start catering and actually get those platforms to start, being able to handle recurring payments. Then you can actually get a lot of people onto more subscription-based products, such as insurance products or streaming products or so forth. So that's something I'm really excited about.
I think, sorry, just with that also comes with a converse as well. So we found a lot of people don't necessarily want the bank account because of the debit orders that come off and they can't cancel them, etc. So the fact that you've got a digital wallet, the upside of it is that there isn't any recurring billing. So I know from a business perspective it is, you want the recurring billing to be able to pay for things, but there is a converse to it as well.
Okay, and that's it really. We're going to wrap it up there and also just keep it simple, to your respective market. So it's a no-brainer for people to want to try and use it, which is the most difficult thing in the world to do. So I know we had a little tea party cheer earlier. I just want you to put your hands together for a phenomenal group of businesses here. And to yourselves, of course.